Good afternoon and welcome back to Girded with Truth. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have been going through the promises of God and how we ought to position ourselves concerning the promises of God. Today, we're getting into waiting on the manifestation of our promises. Galatians chapter 4 verses 4 to 6 says, "But when the fullness of the time was come, God sent forth his Son, made of a woman, made under the law, to redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. And because ye are sons, God hath sent forth the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father." So, Jesus was the plan all along to redeem man. But God did not just send Jesus as soon as sin hit the earth. Instead, he gave man a promise of a redeemer, a promise of an advocate, a promise of an intercessor. And as we receive that promise, we see it didn't happen immediately, but generations after, Jesus came and redeemed all of mankind. So too, we are inheritors of the promises that were spoken to our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and many that would have gone before us. If we continue to Galatians chapter 4 verse 28, it says, "Now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are the children of promise." So we see here that we are the children of promise. We are in the middle of a move. We are in the middle of a promise. We are the ones that God is talking to grab hold of the promise, the things our parents, our grandparents, those that went before us would have prayed and cried and really positioned themselves before God for. We are now in the right place, ripe, ready to receive that promise. So I encourage you, don't just allow this promise that generations would have fought for, generations would have cried out for, generations would have been waiting on this promise. Generations were waiting on the promise of Jesus Christ. And when he came forth, he redeemed us from all of our sins. There's a promise waiting on you. Let's go to Kings, where we see the Israelites also waiting on a promise. So the promise was that God would deliver the Israelites from the Moabites, right? And the Israelites would have won the war. If you go to Kings chapter 3 verses 16 and 17, it says, "And he said, Thus saith the Lord, make this valley full of ditches. And thus saith the Lord, Ye shall not see wind, neither shall ye see rain, yet that valley shall be filled with water, that ye may drink, both ye and your cattle and your beasts." So here God is promising them they will win this war against Moab. But in the middle of this, God is saying, dig ditches in the valley. So it makes no sense. But sometimes you have to be willing to pursue what God says rather than your own logic. In some ways it would make sense to you, but sometimes God gives you instructions that really doesn't make sense. But you have to be willing to obey God no matter what. So God told them to dig ditches. And the reason why he told them to dig ditches was because he wanted to fill these ditches with water. And if we go to verses 21 to 24, we see why God wanted to fill these ditches with water. And it says, "And when all the Moabites heard that the kings were come up to fight against them, they gathered all that were able to put on armor, and upward and stood in the border. And they rose up early in the morning, and the sun shone upon the water, and the Moabites saw the water on the other side as red as blood. And they said, This is blood. The kings are surely slain, and they have smitten one another. Now therefore Moab to the spoil. And when they came to the camp of Israel, the Israelites rose up and smote the Moabites, so that they fled before them. But they went forward, smiting the Moabites, even in their country. So here, it didn't make sense to dig ditches, but it's a matter of perspective. Because when the Moabites saw the water from the angle they were looking at, they thought it looked like blood. And they said, okay, the Israelites killed each other, not knowing that it was just their perspective was off. And when they went thinking they were just going to collect spoil or treasures, they met something else. They met the Israelites ready for war. And the Israelites slayed the Moabites up to their country. So we see the promise of God coming to pass. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes we have to wait a generation or two. Sometimes we might be the ones that have to make a move and then wait. But God is saying He's ready to bring this thing to pass. All you have to do is wait on Him. But they weren't waiting on God by sitting down and doing nothing. They were preparing, they were pursuing, they were going forward based on the instruction of God. So while we wait on the manifestation of our promise, we don't just sit and do nothing. We prepare, we pursue, we overtake the enemy by waiting on the manifestation of the promise. So let us position ourselves properly and wait on the manifestation of the promises God has given to us. It is ours. The time has fully come. God has already sent His Son. We can cry, Abba Father. His Spirit lives in us. We have power, we have authority, we have dominion. And we have the right to our promise. So let us go forth, let us pursue, let us overtake, and let us wait on the manifestation of the promise God has given to us. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye.